Hello and welcome to Mindset Michelle TV. I'm so excited that you're joining me today and my special guest for today. It's so exciting to be here and to be with you all again as part of International Women's Day week. I decided to actually have a special guest each day this week so that we can keep celebrating strong, powerful and incredible women for all of the week, not just for one day. And I truly believe in what my next guest is talking about as well, in that we should be celebrating women and talking about women's issues, not just for one day a year, but throughout the year. So it's my great honour and pleasure to introduce my guest today, who is Angela Vithoulkas. And I'm so sorry about having to look down, but I wanted to make sure I said it correctly. As you can imagine, with a name like Gennoe, people don't necessarily get my surname correct. So I wanted to honour Angela and say hers correctly. Now, a lot of you may know Angela. She's quite a well-known personality and she has lots of fingers in many different pies because she's been a successful businesswoman for many, many years. Her most recent and exciting new project is on SME TV, which you can see each week as well. But she's got a long history as a public personality, as a politician, as a successful award-winning businesswoman, as a Telstra Award winner. So she has quite a wide range of success in politics, business, and of course in leading women and women's issues. So welcome, Angela, and if you can tell people a little bit about yourself as well.
Hello, Michelle. Thank you very much. And as we said before we went live, I can't think of anything more boring than me and talking about me, which is why I avoid it. All I can say is that I feel like I'm just like any other business owner, perhaps not so much as considering myself as a woman in business, because my mother was in business all of her life. My parents are in business together. My business partner is my brother. We've now been officially business partners now 32 years. So I haven't felt as especially defined woman in business until my brother produced two baby girls. And I felt like that really shifted something for me, because there were other women in my life that I wanted to share experiences with and take care of. And I suddenly became aware of how skewed the world was. So I keep calling them my baby nieces, but they're not so baby anymore. The eldest is 6, next one down is 4. And I'm very blessed to also have a 2-year-old nephew. So they have very much shaped how I see things and the lens that I look at things through. So apart from being a business owner and a low-level politician, because I'm a locally elected politician in the City of Sydney, not state or federal, but I have formed my own political party. Apart from that, that's my 30 words or less or thereabout.
I love how casually you say, I formed my own political party and I've been in business for all of these years, Angela. I'm sure there's many people watching who may be part of that disruption happening at the moment of leaving their jobs and starting off in business. And I'm sure today that the pearls of wisdom that you'll share with people about, what you do and how you do it in your business will really help people. And I also love how you're sharing about how your mindset shifted when you had nieces. I hear so many businessmen actually share something similar, that they didn't quite realise about a lot of the inequities, because it's just life, you're just living life. And then it was when they had children themselves and they started to think about, well, do my girls have the same opportunities that I have in the workforce? And the answer is no. And that's when they become a little bit more conscious and aware of it. And so it's fabulous.
It becomes personal.
Yeah.
You realise I think my greatest discovery in political life is that until it actually happens in someone's backyard, people often don't have a view and or aren't concerned. So the word apathy is probably appropriate, but it's also very strong sounding, because people aren't aware. They're just not aware of other people's problems. If you've never been hungry in your life and you've never wondered about where you're going to sleep at night, then you don't understand what homelessness looks like or what poverty looks like. So it's difficult to share that view and champion a cause. Some people have that kind of personality, Michele, where they're very empathetic. Most people it just doesn't occur to them. So as we've grown older and wiser, I start to become less resentful of how people feel about something that may or may not share my views, and start to realize that it really is all about educating people and speaking up about something if you want other people to care, and to not focus so much on, why don't you know? Why don't you get it? Why don't you do something about it?
That's so true. I was at an Optus event one time, and it was a full day future innovation event, and they had no female speakers, and the gentleman organising it was one of the male champions of change. And it just wasn't deliberate. And it was only when I raised it with him and embarrassed him in a way, because he was a champion of change, that he actually then realised, and people do just get busy, and they just get so caught up in what they're doing that they're not necessarily thinking of this or that. And it's only when you then experience it yourself, or somebody can point it out to you, that you then see it, and you start to go, oh yeah, I maybe need to change this or do this differently. And so with such a, you've started your own political party, you've had many different businesses over the years, and successful businesses. What do you think then you would think of as success? What does success mean for you now?
Well, I come from essentially a hospitality background. So the 32 years that I've been in hospitality, and my parents always being self-employed before that, my natural resting state is to be self-employed. So I don't really know any other way. I've never had anybody else to be my boss except me. So I've only ever been accountable to me. I've always had complete skin in the game, full body skin, I always say, not just a hand. So for me, success has often been about just getting through a day. If you've ever been in hospitality and you understand the stress of it in 30-second increments. So the corporate world sometimes has to deliver a project based on a 3-month timeline or a 5-year timeline. Often if you're a consultant or a coach, they're packaged businesses. They're businesses or projects that have a beginning and an end date or something like that. In hospitality, it's often minute by minute, seconds by seconds. You're only ever as good as the last coffee or meal that you've served. So again, Michele, without making it sound too fancy, I would finish a day in business and go, well, I got through that day, so we'll mark that as success. Because sometimes that's as good as it gets in business. The downside of that is when you are self-employed, because that's what it was before someone discovered the word entrepreneur, you were self-employed, that's the box you ticked. Sometimes the stress and the pressures of it are incredibly overwhelming, and sometimes you can't see a way out of things. It takes time and experience to actually go through something. So when you've been through it once, you kind of go, okay, now I know how to do that. And then, of course, things have a way of increasing from the challenge perspective, but, you get through that. So the older you get, the wiser you get. Of course, gravity takes over from everything else, so you never quite look the same. But it's just all about experience. So success for me in hospitality was about getting through the day. Politically, success is about getting re-elected. That's the reward you get for the effort that you put in. And then once you are elected, success is defined by what difference and what change you can make. Now, that's the very naive perspective of politics, and I'm happy to get into some of this, the less, let's say, the less glamorous side of it, because there's a reality to all work. There's what people think is the glamour, and then there's the reality of it, and the fact that there are some choices in life that you make, and politics was something that I got into by default and by a huge accident. And then once you're in it, and it's been nearly a decade now for me, you start to see sides and people that, I'm grateful that I've learned something, but I sometimes wish I had remained blind.
It's that, when you get that knowledge, you can't unknow things, isn't it?
You can't unsee what you've seen.
Yeah.
So it's all about that. And then, of course, the older that you get, you do start to put KPIs on what success is. And that, very much is financial achievement, because if you're in business, that's what you are in business for. If you love what you do, fantastic. But if you're not paying the bills and making money, then it's not a business, it's a hustle or a hobby.
And I love each of those different wonderful examples you were giving again there, Angela. Very much for me, the common thread was about it's outcomes focused. So the outcome of politicians is to be elected and then to have things done. The outcomes in terms of business is to make money. And the outcomes in terms of the hospitality experiences and background you were talking about was very much, and I really appreciate it, that you're getting through that day, that moment, that challenge, the cooker blows up, this happens, that happens. All of the different micro challenges that you have that mean that once you've actually completed all of those micro challenges, it's a huge relief of success. And I think it's very tied in, funnily enough, to senior sports people, where they're only as good as their last performance. So in hospitality, you're pretty much only as good as your last cup of coffee or last meal or whatever it is that you're providing. You can have years and years of doing it fabulously, but if you lose it on one day and don't manage it very well, then it can actually quite disrupt. And similarly, senior sports people that have a similar kind of thing where they have to perform every time they step out on the field or onto the court or wherever. That all leads nicely into, with all of that wealth of experience around those fabulous three areas, what do you think might be three key tips for mindset success, given that you've got such depth and breadth of experience now? 10 years in politics is quite a long time. It's like 100 years, dog years or something.
I agree.
So what would be three key tips or tips that you could share with people to help them? We're talking a lot today about those outcomes, and you're a very action person. What is it that people can do to help build that kind of mindset for themselves?
So I think, Michelle, there's always a lot of conversation about being positive, and that you have to have a certain mindset to be successful. But because we've talked a lot offline, that mindset is unique, right? Every person is different and they approach things in a different way. And it took me a lot of years to work out that I operate in a certain way. The engine that is Angela has to go through a process to get to the other side. So it took me a long time to give myself permission to feel the way I want to feel about something. So if I'm angry about something, I let myself be angry about it. It's not about wallowing. It's just about acknowledging to myself how big or not big, how serious or not serious something is, to move through it. Inevitably, if you are me, at any given point in the day, I'm making a big decision about something. That's just the world that I live in. And whether it's any one of my businesses, any of my new projects, politically, it's a 27-hour cycle. So at any time, I have to make a big decision. I won't always be making a decision that I want to make. I won't always be arriving at an outcome that I want to start out at. So I give myself permission. I say, you're not happy about this, say it. So I say whatever it is I need to feel, and then I move to the second stage, which is, what's the reality here? What is the worst case scenario? For me, by acknowledging the elephant in the room, that I might lose, that I might not be able to help that person, that I really can't replace what I've broken, or the bottom of the world has kind of got a leak in it and it gets serious. Is that the worst case scenario? And I feel like when I've allowed myself to feel a certain way, when I've acknowledged how serious something may or may not be, because your initial feelings about getting angry doesn't necessarily mean it's a serious situation. You just might be reacting, right? Then you have that reality check of, well, hang on a second. In the world of first world problems, where does it rank? Is it a handbag issue, or is it something more serious, right? And then third, I arrive at what I call my mental toughness. So I'm not prepared to let something beat me. I'm not prepared to give up. I don't know what that situation actually looks like, Michele, because I've never given up. I've flogged a dead horse, but I've never given up.
I really love that whole, and you explain it so well there, Angela, about the permissioning, because I think if people took more awareness around and looked at their mindset more around permissioning, because you're right, not everybody's as busy as yourself, but each day they are faced with different challenges, with different decisions, and acknowledging that you're going to make the best decision with the information you have at that point in time is something I work with clients on a lot, because they either beat themselves up beforehand or beat themselves up afterwards. And it's like, well, in that moment, you made the best decision that you could. So permissioning all of the feelings around what you're doing, and then afterwards, maybe the regret or whatever else you may be feeling. But that permissioning process that you described so well is actually so critical and so important, because the other thing that I love that you highlighted was it was you learning your process, and everybody's process is different. So there's not like a vanilla, follow this action coach or whatever and then do it in this way. It's actually understanding what works for you and then permissioning. For me, I know that sometimes there can be some fear about things come up, and I have to sit with that fear and go, like you've said, is somebody going to die? Is the world going to end? And once I go, no, it's a handbag decision. I like that example. It's a handbag decision, even though it feels like the end of the world. So not ignoring those feelings, but acknowledging them and keeping going.
Well, I should probably clarify, Michele, that when I use the handbag experience, this is a woman who's spent sometimes 40, 45 minutes on a decision to buy a new business and 3 weeks on buying a handbag. Because, oranges, apples, right? To me, a handbag is a big life decision. It's what I'm carrying around with me. It's what it represents. But buying a business, 30, 40 minutes is fine. So,
well, and also you've done more businesses probably than handbags over all these years.
Shamefully, I would say no. We've as a business group, we've bought, sold, set up or flipped almost 40 businesses in the last 32 years. Some we've retained, some we haven't. At the peak of any brand, sometimes I would run a team of 70 or 80 people and have several businesses under one umbrella or one brand. So I have a lot of retail experience. My mother would tell you that I've probably got a lot more handbags than that. I don't acknowledge that. So I would say to you, I'm not quite Sex and the City Carrie that's got that big room, but the room's not that much smaller than that.
I love it. I love it.
It's some people have hobbies, and I know that you are going to ask me, and I'm probably jumping ahead, and I hate it when people do that to me, what advice I would give to my younger self, and that is the advice: get a hobby. I never had a hobby. I don't have any hobbies. I've always worked. Everything I do has been around work. I read for work. I read policies. I read legislation. I read manuals on the ovens in the businesses. How does something work? But I don't have any hobbies. So that's the advice to young Angela would be, oh my God, woman, get yourself a hobby.
I love it. I love it. But I also appreciate that, similar to people that have worked on the land, if you think about your background in hospitality as a business, there isn't time for hobbies. And, understanding that that's your background and that's your heritage and what's created you as who you are now, it's not for everybody to, read those manuals late at night when they should be resting or whatever. But for some people, yes, because it then gives you the information and the time back that you need tomorrow when you're managing the teams and managing the people. So I can understand it. But yes, perhaps younger Angela and finding hobbies may be another element around, doing things a little bit differently through life. But it sounds like, politics and other things that you've kind of fallen into could have become those hobbies, because I can see that there is a thread now of becoming more and more of like a personality online. What do you think so far with that has been the things that have helped you be successful in that space?
So I didn't start out my life or my business career ever assuming it would go anywhere near politics. I've always kept away from it, not so much on purpose, but just because I was busy. And like many other people, it's something that you comment on or see on the news, but not really part of your sphere. And I think because I was never corporate, I was never involved in government relations or worrying. I mean, small business owners in general, we're always ripped off by government. We're always hard done by government. So it's not like anyone's going to do anything good for me. So I'd become resigned to that. But, you know, it's one of those stories where the nameless, faceless people came forward, pointed something out to me in a local government sort of environment, which is, you know, the City of Sydney, which is one of the largest councils and certainly one of the largest, you know, billion-dollar budgets around in Australia, you know, came forward and said, are you aware that businesses do have the right to vote in the City of Sydney? So most local government elections, Michelle, you'd know wherever you live, every 4 years you get to vote for your local council. Well, the City of Sydney has a unique act where business owners who don't live in the area but have a business in the area can actually vote as well. And I'd own a business in the city at that point for, 22, 24 years, and I never knew I had a voice that I could exercise at a local election. I thought I was a reasonably informed person. Turns out I wasn't. So I thought I was participating in a new movement. But, when you're kids and you play those games where they have to select teams, I'll have her, I'll have him.
Uh-huh.
Well, everyone else took a step backwards and I was left at the front, and they said, well, you're in. And before I knew it, my face was on 30,000 posters in the City of Sydney. And I was running an election campaign, which I had absolutely no idea about, was completely lost. The whole thing was falling apart on me the first time, until I woke up one day and said, why don't I run this like a small business? And that's where the story then changed. And so I took a seat off Australia's most successful politician. The Lord Mayor of the City of Sydney's had a 30-year political career, never lost an election. Everyone said I couldn't do it. I did it. Typically as females, going into that kind of environment, 4 years later, I ran another election campaign. I got re-elected. Everybody said I couldn't do that either. I tend to think that I should start betting on the opposite of what everyone says because, as I said before, I flog a dead horse, but I never give up.
Well, and I can see that thread that keeps continuing on about you've got your eye on the outcomes. And even when moving into the political space, and you were a bit lost and you were playing the game their way because you didn't know what you were doing. But then after a little bit of time, you went, hang on, I'm going to do this program, the small business owner program that as Angela, and set it up that way. And since then, it's just, got you re-elected and got you doing amazing things, I know, for small businesses everywhere, right across Australia. In terms of the lobbying and the work that you do and the representation that you provide for issues because Kate Carnell is another amazing lady in this space, or she was in her role, bringing these issues that small businesses need policies and governments to pay attention to. But sadly, we don't have the mining lobbyists behind us, so there's not that kind of attention. And also old white male attention.
Well, without wanting to sound like a politician, if we don't speak up and support those who do, we will never be given the respect that we deserve as the engine room of the economy and the backbone of the nation. And instead of having it just as a political line every election cycle, we need representation all the time. So there should be a lens, a small business lens that's applied when decisions are made so that they consider us and how will those decisions, legislations, rules, laws apply or impact us? Because they certainly use that lens for the big donors. They certainly use that lens for the big end of town. And yet, for the part of our nation that is 92% of businesses in Australia are small businesses, we employ more than half the workforce. Where exactly aren't we a force to be reckoned with? Well, unfortunately, just as the women issues that we have right around the world, we are a force that isn't being reckoned with because we aren't coming together to support each other and to say enough's enough, stop messing with our lives, start paying attention to what we want and give us what we need so we can just get on with doing what we do best.
That's so true, and such a powerful message. Thank you again, Angela, because it's so important. I really know the disconnect, having worked in corporate and having worked in small business and as an entrepreneur. On the entrepreneurial side, the corporate side has no idea. And it's also interesting with the gig economy and with technology, which I talk about quite a lot, that the changes in technology mean that the government should be doing everything to turn every single person in Australia into an entrepreneur, because that's the way of the future. And small businesses and the structures and the conversations around that is the starting point. Otherwise, you end up with things like all of the Uber drivers and everybody that are left out to dry with no conditions and no this and no that. But that's obviously a topic for another time. So thank you so much, Angela. And just quickly then, how can people contact you? Because there's so much conversation here, and I'm sure that there's other people that would like to continue part of that.
So they can easily find me if they just search for my name on any social platform. I think Google's up to 1,000 pages. But more importantly, Michele, and thank you for reminding me, something I should have pointed out. Our newest project, of course, is SME TV and podcasts. We're on YouTube. Specifically, it's about giving small business owners a voice and to produce content specifically for them, because mainstream TV said, number one, I didn't have enough talent or content to produce anything mainstream that would work for the small business area, even though they wanted a small business show. And they felt that, hosts that were more journalistic backgrounds were probably better placed to produce and host a show like that. So I said, how hard can it be? So it's very hard, but it's also incredibly satisfying. So look for my name anywhere. You're welcome to shout out, DM me on LinkedIn or any other social platform. If anybody has an idea that they'd like me to amplify for them on SME TV, happy to take it on board. We produce a lot of content, as you know, and I'm very grateful that we're in a position that we can do that.
And what you're explaining is a great example, again, of what I was saying. So thank you for that, Angela, that where government and established institutions actually go, well, no, that won't work. We now thankfully have the technology and the ability to just go ahead and do it and share these messages. That's one of the things that I'm most excited about with International Women's Day this year. It's been another point to kind of check in and see, well, with technology now, I can interview people like yourself and we can get these messages out to more and more people and hopefully inspire more and more women, whatever the age and whatever the occupation, that you can go out and do things like this as well. And the technology now means that you have the ability to do it in ways that, generations past could never have done it, could never have taken those roles, if you like, of what politicians and what the government are not necessarily able to do. So thank you so much again for your time today, Angela, being on the show.
Thank you very much, Michele. And of course, the hashtag is Choose to Challenge, right, for International Women?
Choose to Challenge, yes, definitely. Choose to challenge in whatever way that you can, and also in any forums. And as Angela was saying, it's about supporting the people that are actually standing up and saying, I'm making this commentary and I'm doing this, and making sure that you then support them with that, and supporting outstanding leaders like Angela with what work she's doing, whether it's in Sydney City or SME TV. So letting everybody know about those types of programs and those types of channels now, because I really heard the other point, Angela, about coming together. So coming together in those channels, which then creates an even bigger lobby group so that they have more power and influence with the government. So thank you everybody for watching. It's been another amazing day on Mindset Michelle TV, and I'm so honoured to have my special guest today, Angela Vithoulkas. And tomorrow I'm looking forward to the final in this series for International Women's Day with the amazing Kelly Washer. So many people have gone through quite difficult times with COVID and the economic downturn. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about rising from the ashes, being like that phoenix and rising from the ashes and looking for how you can turn those challenges into opportunities. So until then, I'd love to say to you all again, be great, be fabulous, and be you.